Hello, and this is the bracelet tutorial that I will be doing to do an awareness ribbon bracelet pattern. Now, get your strings. You'll need 6 for the background and 2 for the ribbon color that you want, and set them up as the pattern has shown. This will be the first row that we're doing with 4 simple knots. You'll start off on the left side and do a forward knot with the background strings. Putting those aside, you will take the next 2 and do a backwards knot, putting the background color string over the ribbon color string. As the pattern shows, this first row will be all the background string colors. Now the next 2 strings, you will do the background string again, which is a forwards knot. And finally, you will do another, well, the pattern shows backwards knot, but it doesn't matter which direction you go, I do forwards knots. And now onto the second row, which will be read right to left instead of left to right. Starting with these 2 strings, leave the far right one aside and start with the inner 2 next strings and do a forwards knot. Putting those aside, you take the 2 center strings, which is the ribbon color, and this is your first knot for the actual ribbon pattern itself. So you will do a forwards knot with these 2 strings. And then take the last 2, leaving the far right one off, and do a forwards knot again. And now onto the third row, which is going to be read left to right. Starting with the far 2 left strings, once again you will make another forwards knot. Put those aside, and then you will use the purple knot over top of the background knot, beginning to make the top part of your ribbon. You'll make a backwards knot. And then with the other purple string, you will make a forwards knot. And one more forwards knot with the final 2 background strings. And that will complete it for this row. Now on to the 4th row, which is read right to left, with some trickier knots in here. The first knot that you will be doing is a forwards-backwards knot. The first part of the knot is as if you were doing a forwards, and then you do a backwards knot with the same string, so that the colors are in the same positions after the knot is done as when you began. The center 2 strings will be a simple forwards knot. And then the last 2 strings, you're going to do a backwards forwards knot, where you'll take the purple one and put it as if you're going to do a backwards knot, but then when you do the second time, you make it as if you're doing a forwards knot, so that the colors are in the same positions as before the knot. Now onto the 5th row, which will be read left to right. Taking the far 2 left strings, you make a simple forwards knot. And then with the next 2, you do another forwards knot. With these 2, you will do a backwards knot, so that the purple is over top of the background. And sometimes you have to be careful that you don't get a knot and mess things up. This is why having longer nails when knotting comes really in handy. Is having the knots to grab hold of them is a lot easier than trying to do it with no nails at all. And the final string can be a forwards knot or a backwards knot, and as I've stated, I do forwards knots. It's just easier that way. Now on to the 6th row, which will be read right to left. Leaving the far right aside, you will start with the next 2 and do a forwards knot. And with the 2 purple ones, you will do a forwards knot, successfully closing the first or the top part of the ribbon so that it's like a little square right now. And with the last 2 strings, you will do another forwards knot. Now on to the 7th row, which is read left to right. With the far 2 left strings, you will make a forwards knot. With the next 2, you will do a backwards knot so that the purple string is showing. This is the adding on the tails of the ribbon. With this purple one, you do a forwards knot for the other little tail bit. And with the last 2, you will do another forwards knot. Now on to row 8, which is read right to left. Leaving the far right one aside, you'll take the next 2 and do a forwards knot. With the middle 2, you'll do another forwards knot. And with the purple string, you will do a backwards knot. Thus completing the actual ribbon for this portion of the bracelet. On row 9, you will read it left to right with some trickier knots. So with the first 2, you will do a forwards backwards knot with the background color. Then you do the backwards half of it so that the string colors are in the same position as before the knot. With these, you do a regular forwards knot. The next 2 is another forward knot. And with the last 2 strings, you will do a backwards forwards knot. So you do the first half the backwards, and then the second loop is the forwards knot. And on to the last part of the last row of the bracelet, which is read right to left. Leaving the far right string aside, you do a forwards knot. With the middle 2 strings, you do another forwards knot. And with the last 2 strings, you will do a backwards knot, and thus completing the pattern. To make the rest of the bracelet, all you do is just go back to step 1, row 1, and you continue to go through until the bracelet is the desired length that you want. And that is basically all there is to this pattern.